The Hog's Nigh is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsnigh.com.
It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and John Worrell. And now, here's your host, Chris Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogstide Network, the show where we look at the dollars and cents of the sports industrial media complex. I am joined, we're back to a three-man gang this week. Gang, how are you?
Good.
I was just ordering my Case Keenum Redskins jersey.
Hey, the Keenum era has begun.
The Keenum era has begun, that's right. And, you know, it's really a dangerous thing to order Redskins jerseys. First of all, I'm not a big jersey fan, but, you know, ordering Redskins jerseys is not a solid investment opportunity because, you know, the players are often gone in a year.
Yeah, I need to make an apology to people as well. Fans of the show know I've got a 14-month-old daughter, and sure enough, last fall I bought her a little Alex Smith onesie. It was her first Redskins jersey, and so I did that to us.
It's your fault.
Yeah. It's my fault.
Or
my daughter's a jinx. It could be.
At this point, you're almost, what's the most ironic jersey you can have might be what you want anyway as a Redskins fan. And in that case, Keenum might be a good bet.
I flying really, off the shelves.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've got a LeVar Arrington jersey. I've got a Darryl Green jersey. That's a solid one. I've got
even LeVar's solid.
Well, I mean, but as soon as I bought it, he was gone in the huff of a contract dispute a year after I got it, you know. And then I have a Robert Griffin jersey, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, you know, we all know what happened there, and that's when I gave up buying jerseys.
I only buy retired players at this point.
Because Alex Smith,
move.
Alex Smith seemed like a smart bet. It was a 5-year thing, you know, and then you bought your daughter a little onesie, and he shatters and demolishes his leg like that.
I so regret that decision. I'm so sorry, everybody.
You retroactively bought a retired jersey.
Interesting logic there. I approve.
You stuck with your ideals, so congrats on that. All right, let's jump into the show.
I'd like you to buy like a jersey for someone we need retired. You know, but buy a jersey for like Dak Prescott. See if you
I think you're foreshadowing a later segment of the show, perhaps.
Maybe.
All right, Steve, you've got a little bit of house cleaning and Hogstide Network news to hit us off at the top. Go for it.
Well, most excitedly, we're a real network now. It's not just a word that Alex threw on the top of a web page anymore. The reason we're a real network, and I should have said this last week, but I didn't, we have Rick Snyder and Matt Cohns joining us with their show Seasons of Discontent. This is the successor in interest to the old Burgundy and Gold Hour that Rick and Matt did. This is a show where they changed the name and rebranded it because they are not just focusing on the Redskins anymore. The show is all about the entire DC sports scene. They talk about some other stuff in there. Rick is a tour guide, and he's got a billion cool, interesting stories about Washington, D.C., so please check it out. It's a great listen. I listen to it every week, and not just because I have to. So welcome to Rick and Matt, and please check it out.
Welcome aboard, fellas.
Yes, the empire expands. Congrats.
Yes.
All right, we're going to jump right in here, and we're in the kind of wacky season of pre-draft NFL where rumors and positioning and you can count the layers of no lives that you have by the amount of mock drafts that you filled out. So we're at that part of our calendar year. And the runaway story is Kyler Murray in general, but then the heat got turned up this past week when Charlie Casserly of the NFL Network, former Redskins general manager, Houston Texans general manager, longtime league insider, was reporting that at least 2 of the 10 teams that talked to Kyler Murray were giving him extremely low grades in the classroom elements, the interview elements, and the other things that the teams get from those one-on-one engagements. This blew up the draft rumors and all that nonsense, and it created quite a blowback from people with opinions and, more importantly, stakes in this. So the Kyler Murray camp, other reporters looking for a different angle, different outlets, that really ratcheted it up with a lot of bashing back and forth. I think Charlie Casserly was accused of being a racist. It got heated, as you might say. So what do you all think about, one, the controversy, and then two, the kind of just silliness of that all of this engenders that gives us these situations?
Well, first of all, I have no issues with Charlie Casserly reporting about what scouts told him. He's not a GM anymore. He is an analyst on the NFL Network, and if he has solid sources and scouts, whoever they are, that told him that this was their opinion of Kyler Murray, I have zero problem and zero issue with him reporting it. I don't think he's a racist for doing it. I don't think I have zero problem whatsoever with it. I mean, as long as it's a real source and he's not, slandering the guy, I don't get the problem and I don't get the controversy whatsoever. To me, it's a total non-story.
I think that back in the day, what Howard Cosell said was racist.
Yes.
What Rush Limbaugh said on ESPN, I also feel was racist.
Yes.
I don't. I think that the NFL has gotten beyond the question of can we have a black quarterback? We've moved past this. We know that there are a lot of very successful black quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I think that some of them are going to be great in the classroom, and some of them aren't. And I think that Casserly has an obligation to report if he thinks that there's a story and he's got sources to back it up. I think he does it. It sounds like maybe his sources were wrong. I don't know anything about Kyler Murray. He might be brilliant. He might be terrible. I really don't know. But I do feel that his job as a journalist or a reporter or an analyst is to share the stories that he hears.
I mean, to me, the interesting part about this was that everybody was there was a whole group of people that were furious, including other analysts, on ESPN and on NFL Network seemed to be furious with Charlie Casserly that he would dare to say this. And I've been around Charlie Casserly a little bit, off camera and private. And I wouldn't say I know him, very well, anything like that, but I've never known him to be devious, to be racist, anything like that.
No, he seems to be a straight shooter.
Yeah, he looks like he comes across in person as an accountant. It's like you're talking to your CPA. That's what he comes across as.
We have a situation where anything, since we're the 24-hour news cycle now applies to all aspects of life, and if anything comes up that is remotely controversial, it's you're just throwing chum in the water. These people need something to talk about. We're doing it right now.
Well, here's
people
the
need
thing.
Something to talk about, and he gave them something to talk about, and then everybody's just going to jump on board because there's nothing else going on.
There is another angle to it. The other angle is that Casserly apparently has a draft prep service business as a side gig. Okay.
Uh-oh.
And so where he will help to prepare people for the non-athletic part of the combine, which is the interviews and everything else. Apparently Kyler Murray is not one of his guys. And so the allegation, the other side of the non-racial allegation was that Casserly is mad that Murray did not subscribe to his services. Yeah. Now he's bashing him. But again, it comes back to this. If Casserly has scouts from teams that tell him that, I don't get the point. I don't get the problem. As long as he has real sources, I don't get the problem. Is it a conflict of interest to have Casserly be an analyst for the NFL Network and have a combine service? I don't think so. I mean, they ESPN's got a employee of the Mets now who is one of their baseball analysts, for example. Magic Johnson does TNT basketball work. There's people that have all sorts of other side gigs. I don't get the problem. As long as he had real sources, I don't get the problem.
Chris?
I think the idea that Charlie Casserly is a racist is ridiculous. I think he could be accused of being old and culturally out of touch, and so then he's
I disagree, sir.
Step on the rake many times and smack himself in the head. So I think there's an element of that on this, and obviously, there's some issues with the regular reputation of African American quarterbacks. The whisper campaign around whether it's the Wonderlic test or the classroom is definitely a thing. There's two pieces, but that's actually not my fight right now. Or actually not a fight, but that's not my issue. There's two things that do concern me. One is just how much all of these, and this is Charlie Casserly is just a stand-in for all of them. the journalists, because of access and the way the game is played, allow themselves to be manipulated constantly to such a degree. Because, what we're talking about is what really is going on is teams looking for angles to where guys rise or fall, how much they're going to have to pay, so this is the most Machiavellian time of the year for the NFL. So they're just throwing. So there's a little bit of Casserly, like, well, how much are you being used and how much did your judgment cloud that? And you add in his conflict of interest. I don't think it's a he should step down or shouldn't be able to do these multiple revenue streams for his work. But it does mean you should be a little smarter about being manipulated, which is probably what happened. And that's still a source. It's still legitimate information.
So
but
you're thinking that
why you're being told.
You're thinking that one of these, maybe 4 to 8 teams might have gotten in his ear and said, "Hey, listen, this guy, he's not a number one guy." Then Charlie reports that, and then the next thing you know, his stock slips, and he's getting picked up by a team that wants him later.
That happens all the time.
Nothing that's given to a journalist right now doesn't have a agenda.
There's
I mean, that happens all the time. And the other part of this, to me, I call it the Kyler Murray army. There is a group of people out there who are very, very, very strongly in favor of Kyler Murray. And if you say anything against this guy, they're coming after you. It's happened to me personally. For mouthing off about, daring to mouth off about Kyler Murray on the other show and on Twitter and everything else. And they will come after you in an instant if you say the dude has a hangnail, And so I think some of that is this. I think you're definitely right, Chris. I mean, is there about the being manipulated? It happens. Excuse me. GMs do it. In the media, scouts do it. Everybody's trying to manipulate everybody else, and they're trying to hide their intention. And, is some of that part of this? I mean, who knows? It's certainly very possible. It comes down to me, Casserly needs to be aware of that. Obviously is aware of that. He's probably manipulated people himself when he was the GM of the Texans and the Redskins. So, he's got to understand and make a judgment call whether he's being manipulated or not.
I remember back in the infamous 2012 draft, infamous if you're a Redskins fan, that prior to that draft, I remember there were whispers of, hey, RG3 has an ego problem. He's all about himself. He doesn't want to listen to anybody else. And when you mentioned the what you're calling the Kyler Murray army, man, the level of smack that got back on anybody that said that RG3 was anything less than a wonderfully humble Christian human being, the best, like the savior. Then there was a lot of, and then boy did that unfold different.
Well, you say that, and the guy who wrote that originally was a guy named Nolan Naraki, who was an NFL Network analyst, draft analyst, who did draft write-ups on players, and he wrote that about RG3's ego in his draft write-up that year. That's where it started. Nolan actually ended up leaving the NFL Network over that and a couple others. He said the same thing about Cam Newton, similar things about Cam Newton, which also proved to be somewhat true. He said Cam Newton was thin-skinned and a bunch of other things. I heard Lance, the guy who took his place, his name is Lance Zierlein. And Lance is a local Houston radio host as one of his many gigs. And he talked about this week, heard him on the radio. And he said that sometimes the networks will try to quash the things he says about players to protect the network. He said that there have been times when he didn't say the player's name, but he said that he had some personal tidbit about the player similar to that, big ego something, that a scout had told him he wanted to run with this, and the network quashed it specifically to avoid this kind of discussion.
This is why I really have a problem with teams or networks owning media outlets like this, because regardless of Charlie Casserly, selling draft prep to agents, talk about a conflict of interest is where you have you're supposed to be running a journalistic endeavor that's owned by the team that then creates this level of tumult in the players and the teams. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And so, how do you have that situation? Now, you want to have an NFL network and you want to broadcast some games or whatever, that's fine. But you have built this whole, basically, ESPN competitor for NFL content, which is analysts, reporters, journalists, studio hosts, the whole media apparatus. We already don't know the relationships between the journalists and the teams. Now it's league owned. Like, of course it's quicksand. You can't step anywhere without stepping in a quicksand of poo-poo. So of course we're going to have these kind of issues with a league owned media arm.
So I don't disagree with you at all. My mind is going back real quick to I know that we kind of put it to bed, but the racism question, and I have an idea for why that's probably coming up, and I really haven't looked into it, so I could be completely off base. But when we were talking, we talked a little bit about the same thing happened with RG3, with Cam Newton, and those kind of got quashed. And it occurs to me we're talking about 3 black quarterbacks. And so in my brain, I'm trying to think back to when's the last time that, was it Johnny Football? So I'm trying to think of when's the last time that we had this conversation about white quarterback. Is his ego too big? Is
Jay
he too,
Cutler.
Was it Jay Cutler?
Jay Cutler last year when he went to the Dolphins.
Well, but in the draft,
not the Dolphins.
When we're talking about is a guy going to be NFL ready or not because he's too much of a. Yeah, I think Johnny Manziel was the last, because we did this as well about come on, Tampa Bay.
Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
and of course, Jameis Winston got charged with a crime.
Well, yes, he did. So Johnny Manziel, I think, is the obvious, but I think that the reason why it comes up as a racist topic is because this seems to happen more often with black quarterbacks than it does with white quarterbacks.
I mean, I don't know.
Could be wrong.
I don't think you're saying that it is racist. I think you're saying it comes up because it's been black quarterbacks, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right. I think that this used to be a racist pattern in the NFL. I think that they have largely corrected that, but I think that some of the stories continue to tend to gravitate toward black. Black quarterbacks.
I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, and that's fine. But I think a lot of the cries of racism, generally speaking, in this country are just people whining about things and not going their way more than anything. Certainly there's racism, in the country and all of that. But I think a lot of the cries of racism are silly.
I know that you think that.
Yeah, and that's just me. But it's possible, John. I mean, it's Kyler Murray, Cam Newton, RG3, all black quarterbacks. Who knows? I don't think Charlie Casserly's racist from what I personally know of him. I think he maybe, he took a report and took it a long way. And that's, end of story.
Two things. It's not, I don't know. All of this is a fairly, baseline, oversimplified view of racism, so I think that's part of it. But of course, it's easy to say, oh, Charlie, you wouldn't want to see his Wonderlic scores, and then suddenly we're off to the races. So it's the level of what's going on here is much more nuanced, and so that's fine. We can leave that aside. But the other important thing that I think is in this story is that the public at large has their own interview with Kyler Murray from the Dan Patrick Show. So before the combine, there was already something that you could be, Grand Wizard of the KKK, or you could be running Black Lives Matter. It was an awkward interview, right? Yeah, just as two human beings interacting on public airwaves, it was uncomfortable to watch. So the world that cares has already sat through a version of this interview. So that just amplifies anything that comes out of those one-on-one sessions. Everyone's going to connect that in their brain immediately.
Kyler Murray came across as a big dummy in the Dan Patrick interview. That's what I came across thinking. This guy is unprepared for this. He's not that bright, and it was just a overall horrible interview. And my opinion of him was significantly less than before I listened to that interview.
Right. So that's just the canvas that all this came kind of out upon. All right. So let's move on. And to the wow. Every year we love to get into March Madness with looking at giant NCAA men's basketball scandals, and this year's tourney will be no different from the Hogstie's perspective. So, Steve, tell us what's happening to the number 10 team in the country.
Okay, it's a never-ending stream of NCAA basketball corruption this week, first of all, to back up, if you recall, kids, last week on the show, or 2 weeks ago on the show, when Chris was out, we talked about how the NCAA is kind of dragging their feet on doing anything about the corruption scandal because there's trials going on and whatnot. Well, we should have delayed that story because this past week, Will Wade, who is the head coach at LSU, Yahoo Sports got a hold of a recording between Will Wade and Christian Dawkins, who is one of these middlemen who is being charged by the federal government, in which Wade is talking about making an offer of money to one of his guys who is now an LSU player, Javonte Smart. So the quotes are great. I mean, there's no debate what we're talking about. So here, and I'm reading this from the original Yahoo article, which is from March 7th. It's called "Exclusive Wiretap Reveals LSU Coach Will Wade Discuss Recruiting Offer with Hoops Scandal Middleman." And so what he says is, "I was thinking last night on this Smart thing," Wade said. "I'll be honest with you. I'm blanking tired of dealing with this thing. Like I'm just blanking sick of dealing with the blank. Like this should not be blanking complicated." And he goes on to say, "Dude, I went to him with a blank strong ass offer about a month ago. Strong. The problem was, I know why I didn't take it now. It was tilted towards the family a little bit. It was tilted towards taking care of the mom, taking care of the kid. Like it was tilted towards that. Now, I know for a fact that he didn't explain everything to the mom. I know now he didn't get enough of the piece of the pie in the deal." And what he's talking about is the middleman who took the offer to the kid wanted more money. That's what he's saying. And so there's no debate. I don't know how you get out of saying, yes, the head coach is involved in bribing a player. That's pretty, I don't know how you explain that away and say he was misquoted. And the end of this is that LSU, which, as Chris said, is the number 10 ranked team in the country, they're the number 1 seeded team in the SEC tournament coming up this week. Big deal. LSU suspended Will Wade indefinitely, and that has riled up all the LSU faithful. They've claimed the athletic director is a coward, and Will Wade is totally innocent, and nothing untold happened here. And that says something about the IQ of LSU students, which is certainly not high.
So I think that one of the things that you're going to see here is that they're going to, this was all Will Wade. Nobody else knew this was going on. It was,
of course not. They're innocent.
The coach was the guy on that was caught. So therefore, it was all on him. Everybody else is a choir boy, and it's this is today's leap day, and we're leaping forward, or at least we leapt forward back when we recorded this.
We leapt?
We did. We leapt. We're leaping forward into the same story over and over and over again.
I haven't leapt anywhere.
As long you could get leapt behind. Yeah. As long as there's this much money in college sports, it's going to continue to be the same story over and over and over again. The fact that until there is fundamental change in the NCAA and NCAA athletics, and its relationship to pro leagues and the amount of money involved, this is just going to continue. They ought to find a better way to legitimize this rather than having everybody run around behind the curtains doing shady. Here's the problem. You have to understand how much of a cut your middleman wants. It's too much toward the family. It's a business. It's just now in the open, and if they put it out in the open, they can regulate it and figure out a way to have it be less shady.
Chris?
I pretty much agree with John philosophically. I don't know how the hell you do it, but something's gonna change, or we'll just have to, actually, probably nothing has to change because we can just repeat these pseudo shock, outrage, chop off the head of whoever is, head has popped up the furthest. It can be the sacrificial goat, and we can all move on. And that seemed to work out okay. So maybe that is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess, is maybe the big takeaway, because nothing of this, there is absolutely 0% shocking about any of this.
No. And clearly, Will Wade is not the only coach. Clearly, I think you'd be a fool to think that there are not other coaches on record having this exact same conversation. Clearly, this is going on all throughout all or most of the big time NCAA programs at least. I mean, as I've said before on the show, the problem with just openly paying these players is you have a federal law problem. You've got something called Title IX, which says, NCAA universities cannot spend more money on men's sports than women's sports. They have to pay equal amounts of attention to both gender sports. And so, if you're going to pay, Javante Smart hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can't just ignore the women's swim team, in essence. And so you'd have to change federal law somehow to allow this to happen. And that's, getting Congress to do anything whatsoever that's remotely productive for the country, it seems to be an impossibility right now. So I think it's a problem without a fix, without congressional involvement. The paying the players part of it. Because, you're right. I mean, if you just, maybe the answer is just to get rid of NCAA sports, quite honestly.
Yes.
It's not, it has nothing to do with academics anymore. It has nothing to do with universities. It's strictly a money-making venture for universities and the NCAA and the people who run the NCAA. So why are we even pretending? Let's just stop with the collegiate athletic nonsense and just make it a pro league. Period. Dot. The end. How about that?
There's some, if the situation is evolved, it's going to look what you just described will be the sort of dominant narrative. I mean, how and why and all the policy levels, a lot to be decided, but that will be the direction.
Because it's even more insane for basketball players. They literally, for like the one and dones, like this, I don't know if Zion Williamson's a good student or not. His name popped in my head. Zion Williamson has to stay eligible for one semester, and that's it. He has to stay eligible through March. So he's got to pass the first semester of his freshman year so he can remain eligible for academics. Then he doesn't have to go to class again, because he's, the eligibility, as long as he doesn't do something stupid from an academic standpoint, the tournament's in March and then he's home free. So these guys are students in the absolute barest sense of the word only, especially in basketball. It's just absurd.
It's the problem is there's so much money, and it's so closely tied to you've got universities, you have the sort of the boosters, you have alumni, you have fraternities, there's a lot of networking, a lot of connections. It goes deep into Congress. It goes all throughout the sort of the highest financial levels of American society. And you're not, and separating the two is going to take some kind of crowbar, the likes of which man cannot fathom.
I mean, the other part about this is my university's basketball team isn't very good, and so anybody out there who knows me and you want to try to pull some money together and get some rich guys who are alumni together, let's figure out how to bribe some of these good players to get them to come, because I'm tired of seeing our team not in the tournament.
I'm going to Kickstarter a Black Ops slush fund.
Yeah, please, because, as long as everybody's doing it, we might as well get involved and start doing it ourselves, because nobody seems to care. It's like, Chris, I love your analogy, Chris. It was like, the head that pops up the highest, you chop it off. That's truly what it is. Like, Will Wade's a sacrificial lamb right now. The people of, the fine, slightly undereducated, unsophisticated people of LSU, the LSU community are going to be mad for a while, and then they'll move on, and we'll move on to the next scandal.
They'll move on so fast as long as they don't get bounced from a tournament, and let's say they're in the Sweet 16, they'll be celebrating this whatever Texas random coach that's won about 10 games in his college basketball coaching career. He'll be the next Dean Smith at LSU if they're in the Sweet 16 this year.
My favorite part of this conversation so far is that Chris made him a sacrificial goat and not a lamb. It's always,
I'm a progressive guy.
It's always sacrificial lamb, but I really like that you branched out. You thought outside the box and went to goat.
You shouldn't kill children of any mammal.
You're not kidding.
So, So interesting storyline. Well, I'm sure, March Madness will give us a few opportunities to either follow up on this or other stories. I will point out that, the sad irony of the whole thing is that it's the actual family that's getting the shaft through all of these greased palms, right? It's like, the mom got too much is the
Well, I don't know.
ultimate-
Yeah, I mean, the family got some money, though.
Yeah,
maybe
but
buried under the mattress somewhere, but
But all the middle people are like, why are we giving that mom so much? Like,
Screw
get
the
more
mom.
for me. Yeah.
Screw the mom.
That's the ultimate. That's the sad irony.
Okay.
They need to go. Maybe there's like a club, or like a Facebook page for parents of bribed NCAA basketball players, and they can go compare notes and say, okay, I only got 100,000, but my kid was a 5-star recruit, and your kid was a 3-star recruit, but he got 300,000. And
They
my
need
answer,
to unionize, I think.
well, I'd just say they need to be better negotiators. And yeah, I mean, I'm not generally in favor of unions, but in this case, maybe a union would be the way to go. And so there's going to be a union of parents of kids who are quality basketball players and want to be bribed. That's the name of the union. And so they can stand up to Nike and say, you owe all of us more money.
It's a hell of an acronym for that union.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. We'll have to see if we can come up with a decent word for that union.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to not Charlie Casserly myself and be involved in that one.
I'm going to represent
all
them.
right.
If you want to unionize, call me.
I would buyer beware on Steve as your union representative lawyer. Just that's my end of my public service.
I want some of the money. You get, as long as you give me 20% of the cut, I'm
right.
fine.
That's the spirit.
All right, so on to another bribed athlete, and that's Bryce Harper and his contract. I don't know, melodrama may be the right word for it if you take the last 5 or 6 months of it. But he did end up signing a contract with the Philadelphia Phillies. It's very long. It's like, 13 years or something. But important point to mention here is that by the time Bryce Harper is done being paid out on this contract, Bobby Bonilla would still have 3 to 4 years of payments from his Mets contract.
Is that real? Is that true?
Yes, that is true. That's the best thing about the story.
Bobby Bonilla, I guess, you have to applaud Bobby Bonilla. Really,
Greatest retirement plan of all time.
Oh, it is. It really is. Look, Bryce Harper. The people of DC are mad at Bryce Harper for leaving. What's interesting about this contract is that it's 13 years, $330 million with no opt-outs. That is freaking unheard of in baseball. And apparently what Harper said he wanted was he didn't want to deal with free agency anymore ever again. He wanted one city. Why he would pick Philadelphia, God only knows, because it's just a wonderful place, Philadelphia. But and John's laughing because he knows how I feel.
Steve's love affair with Philadelphia continues.
Yeah, they're just great people. They're just solid citizens, and they're more than just cheesesteaks. But anyway, point is, it's unheard of, and what he had to give up to get that, to get the no opt out thing, and get a contract so long, is he gave up average annual value. He could have gotten $300 million probably from some other team, but not that long. They didn't want to be locked down either, so he gave up a little bit of average annual value to get such a long contract. It's interesting, he did what he wanted. I'll give him that much.
I love this contract, and the reason why I love it, I love the idea that he doesn't want any more distractions in his career. He wants to play in a venue where he can hit the ball well, where he's had some success and he feels like he can be successful. He wants to play for an organization that he feels can be successful, and he doesn't want Larry Bird didn't bounce around the NBA like LeBron. He was a Celtic. And he remained a Celtic. Magic Johnson, same kind of thing. When you have that kind of talent, and you think, you know what, I just want to be somewhere, become part of that community, have some success, and go forward. I think I could get by on $330 million. I don't know about you fellas, but I'm fairly certain I could find a way to keep the food on the table. And there's more to life than pursuing every dollar that you can get, and I think that,
he's
that
a real
Bryce
good
Harper's.
Samaritan.
I think that he's made a good decision. He's prioritizing what is important to him, which isn't necessarily chasing the better contract at every opportunity, and we've all seen athletes that do that. He's pursuing what his narrative is going to be when people look back on his career, and I like it. I think it's a good decision.
John has obviously been reading too many infant goodnight books, which have great one-line
they frequently rhyme as well. If I could make that rhyme, then I'd be...
Because that is one ridiculous hot take, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bryce, I'm on your side, buddy. I'm on your side.
I don't care, but put the money aside for a second. The idea that he did this for some kind of altruism and all the reasons you just said is crazy, and we can debate that. It's dumb. This contract is going to be a disaster for all involved in 3 years.
No.
Listen to what John just said. Sorry, so Steve just said. He just said they're locked into each other. This guy, and I like Philadelphia, by the way, and people from Philadelphia, and I always have a good time in Philadelphia, so I'll even, but I also understand the critique.
Worst fans in the country.
This guy just locked himself in. They already think he's a prima donna. This is going to crater to such an unbelievable degree.
No, we'll talk in 15 years.
Everyone is going to be 15 months. Let's talk. It's going to be a disaster.
This is going to be a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I don't think.
I think John sounds like he's talking about Mother Teresa, not a baseball player.
He did it for personal. I think he did it out of selfishness, but I think it's his selfishness for how he wants his career to go. It's just that he's selfish for something other than money.
He's a saint, dude. He gave up. He sacrificed so much for his $330 million. It's John. Look, Chris is right. It's going to be a complete disaster. Give it a couple seasons, and the people are going to be with pitchforks and throwing batteries at him.
This is where I get to sit back, and I'm gonna. So if you're listening to this, I want you to take presumably you're on some sort of device. Save this into a folder somewhere. Put it in your favorites. Name that folder. John was right. This is a folder that's going to fill up over time. But in the meantime, this can be your first entry if you don't already have one. I know a lot of you have already got. Oh my God, John was. So this is your first entry in the John was right folder, and we're going to look back on this day.
I'm going to set an over and under about when this falls apart and becomes a disaster. At let's see, we're in what are we? We're in March now, so I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it till the beginning of next season. So that's going to be 13 months.
I'm taking under. And when this guy's hitting 232
with 100 strikeouts
June of this season, it's going to be daily drama in Philadelphia, and everyone is going to be
I'm going to blow everything up right now. This contract has just switched my allegiance. I'm now a Phillies fan. I'm now a Phillies fan on account of this particular contract and the desire. Hey, you know what? Let's return back to the good old days when somebody played for one team, and we're going to let him retire as a Philly. Go Phillies! What do we say? Go Big Red! I don't know what the hell we say.
I don't care what they say.
I haven't been a fan for very long.
I'm very glad the Dodgers were too cheap to sign up for a contract like this. Thank God. And so Chris, we'll see. I'm going to say we survive a season with this. You're going to say June, so we're going to see who's right. John, there's no chance John is right. He's completely wrong.
I just have to make it to June without anything.
No. My over and under was next March.
March.
Yeah, the start of next season. Stretchy. The start of next season is the over and under. Chris picked the under. You're going to obviously pick the over because you think it's great.
I'm way over. Oh, I'm over. This is beautiful. And then we have to do it again at the 10-year mark. How do people feel about it 10 years from now? And you guys are going to think, he's going to be bagging groceries somewhere by then. But no, I don't think so.
This is like the marriage that you can't get a divorce out of, no matter how bad it gets.
Yeah.
And back in the day, that's how marriages were. There was rope involved.
Yeah, well, that worked out for everyone. Great metaphor. Okay. Well, now we'll move for our final story to shotgun marriages that we're able to get out cleanly. And if you're ESPN, you kept everything you needed intact. And that is, of course, Jason Witten, after having maybe one of the worst seasons as a color analyst in recent memory across all leagues, has left the Monday Night Football booth to return to the Dallas Cowboys. I guess he thinks they're close, or he just couldn't stop being a Cowboy.
Broadcast.
But this means that the Monday Night Football gig at ESPN is really in full reboot mode after 1 year. They also just canned the Booger Mobile completely, and I think they're looking to rebuild this booth from the bottom up. This might, we have to remember the Monday Night Football brand has tarnished when it moved to ESPN in general. It went from broadcast TV to cable, all that, and I understand, and I'm a big champion of why viewer habits have changed, and that's probably fine, but it took the franchise of Monday Night Football, which is iconic, which helped build the league, and which we see was completely prescient considering we're getting primetime games across the NFL schedule. But that franchise is almost dead. It almost was killed last year, and I'm curious and intrigued what they do to reboot it for this year. But I have to say, ESPN, after stepping in crap with the whole idea of last year's Monday Night Football, just got the get-out-of-jail-free card of all get-out-of-jail-free cards.
What I really wonder about this is whether Witten actually wants to play football again, or whether this was just a graceful way for him to get out of what even he knew was a complete disaster. That's what I'm wondering. And because I think his football career is going to be a disaster. There's no way a 37-year-old tight end is going to come in and do anything, right? And he was already looked like he was running quicksand when he last played, so it's going to be horrible. But I wonder if Jerry Jones basically just threw him a solid, and said, "Here's an out."
I don't think that Witten's gonna. I don't know the over/under, but I'm next March. I think he's out.
Next month, okay.
You know what? I couldn't agree with Chris. Monday Night Football used to be one of the best things on television. It was iconic. It was amazing. You had the Yellow Jackets. You had the best broadcast team. Everything was terrific. And then when it switched over to ESPN, everything went to hell. And it's now all ESPN Monday Night Football is to me is a source of potential inconvenience if the Redskins happen to be playing on that night.
Because they're going to lose.
That's all it means to me. Well, that generally speaking, yeah. But it just means that I've got to watch football on a different day. I don't even care about it. Like this whole idea that we're going to keep throwing games onto Monday and Thursday and Saturday and England and wherever, and that therefore I'm going to watch more football is a complete fallacy. I think it's if you're not going to put a good show together, I'm not going to just follow you blindly because it's football.
Well, I wish they would pay me because I have if I'm an ESPN executive that has somehow either has to make a final decision or has to put together a pitch for what to do here. Okay, he's actually a guy already in the building. Just hire Peyton Manning. We saw what Tony Romo, this pains me to admit, was the most fun you can have watching a football game from the commentary standpoint. You don't think Peyton Manning's going to be twice as good? I do. We already know he's good on camera. We know he's got a personality, and we know he can break down. He's going to do the same level of like almost instant reading the field analysis that Tony Romo can do.
Yeah.
It's the most you'd be the top. You'd put the iconicism back in it immediately if you put Peyton Manning in the booth.
How do we know they haven't tried?
How do we know they're not moving him out to make room for Manning?
Well, we don't. So, I mean, yeah, so then you could put that one in my right folder. But that's what I would be, if I'm inside of ESPN, I'm advocating that right now. And we know he can do it because they gave him the warm-up act all year doing the film breakdown show on ESPN. So
he was
great. Minor leagues.
He was great. Yeah. No, that would be great. A great move. And if you're right, I mean, maybe ESPN's tried. Maybe Peyton doesn't want to do it. I mean, who knows? But it would be great for Monday Night Football. Last year, I think, was probably the low point in the history of Monday Night Football.
When did they have the comedian on?
Dennis Miller?
That was like early 2000s.
Yeah, that was pretty awful.
Yeah, but I think Al Michaels was still there at the time. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad. I mean, the Booger Mobile and Jason Witten have got to be the low point. Because number one, the Booger Mobile added absolutely nothing. Booger McFarland was pretty good. He had some good things to say, but having him on the sidelines was
ridiculous.
Did nothing, and it blocked the views of people who were paying hundreds of dollars, more than to have this big, machine And notice halfway through the season they made gave him a plexiglass back to try to. But I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. I think they should try to bring Peyton in. I don't know if he wants to do it or not. I will go to my grave thinking that Jerry Jones just threw his favorite player a solid by offering him a contract as a way out to avoid getting fired. That's what I think happened. Yeah,
I have no reason to disagree with that.
I do generally think that ESPN has ruined. I don't know if ruined is the right word. They've degraded the brand of Monday Night Football. There's something to be said for. Years ago, it used to be a pretty special thing, and you're right. I mean, John, the days of Howard Cosell and everything, and the people that followed him, it was a big deal. And to me, it's just sort of another football game now. Not that that's wrong. I mean, we all love football and everything. But I think the iconicism of what Monday Night Football used to be is long dead.
Hank Williams Jr., that's all you need.
Well, they brought it back this year. That was one of their reboots.
It's not. I wasn't watching because it sucked.
It is bad. I don't know. I can't remember why Hank Williams got kicked to the curb in the first place. He said something that was a bit off color.
He said something about Obama.
Oh, was that what it was? Yeah, I knew there was something, and I guess time and ratings heals all wounds.
Yeah.
He mentioned something before that I loathe to admit. I had no desire to listen to Tony Romo. I felt like I've already listened enough to Troy Aikman. I don't. What I don't need is an unending string of Dallas Cowboy quarterbacks in my ear all season long. Tony Romo really surprised. I didn't really much like him as a quarterback. I thought that he was a little flighty. But he was also a Cowboy, which didn't help him. But I really think that he did a phenomenal job. He's a natural in the booth, and I agree. Though I'd love to hear what Peyton Manning can do, but I also I remind myself that just because a guy is personable and good in commercials, it may not translate. But from what we've seen so far, he certainly has the capability.
Peyton may be a guy who's got so much money he doesn't really want a permanent gig that takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
that may be part of it. Because Monday Night Football, I mean, they've got to be there days ahead of time, and I mean, it's not. They don't just roll in Saturday night, and then they've got to turn around and go to the next city. It's a grind. Their weekend is probably like Tuesday and Wednesday would be my guess, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Thursday's probably travel day, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I would assume because they go to practice, they go to meetings, and it's more involved than people think. So Peyton may just not want to do it. Who knows?
Yeah, the reason he's not in that booth right now, or maybe even 18 months ago when they did the Booger Witten deal after Gruden left, might be because of he could be the reason why that's not happening. Sure.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we talk about the degradation of Monday Night Football and the brand and all that. That's all true. But John Gruden was a level of methadone for it that, people liked him. He had his own, shtick. So, it sort of delayed the inevitable and when they, just made a horrible decision on the heels of him. But, he at least kept, he at least was decent. So he kind of kept the energy going for his stretch.
Did you just compare John Gruden to methadone?
Yeah, we started out with sacrificial goat, and now we've moved on to John Gruden is a level of methadone.
Am I wrong?
No, I don't believe you are wrong. It's a funny thing. The more I think on it, I think the more spot on you might have been, sir.
As we record this, John Gruden just traded for Antonio Brown.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Antonio Brown and all his ego.
They gave him a new contract.
How old is Antonio Brown?
31.
All right.
I think they had to fly Antonio on one plane and his ego on another, because I don't think the body of Antonio Brown and his ego could fit in one aircraft. Thank God that
what he wanted.
Yeah, he did. Thank God he's not a Redskin. I don't trust anybody with black hair and a gold mustache.
Interesting. That's another good quote from the show. I think Steve doesn't trust anybody with black hair and a gold mustache.
Would you? I mean, come on. That says a lot about a person.
I'd buy methadone from him.
You'd buy methadone from him? Oh my!
We've gone off the rails. Who's responsible
right.
for being the adult in this conversation?
Not me, but I'll bring us to a close here as we've sped through 4 topics today. We will see you in another 2 weeks. Now, John, I know you've spent the last couple weeks memorizing your Twitter handle, so do you want to show everyone your progress?
I'll go last.
Okay.
He still doesn't know it. My Twitter is at the Hogsty. I man that most of the time, not always. You can find me there. No promises that I'll see it. So your comment.
I'm at John.Worrell John_Worrell. Yeah. Here's
How long
the problem.
has it been since you checked your Twitter feed?
Since the last time that we did this show with me on it, which means probably about a month. My problem is, and I promise I will get back to some people, periodically people listen to this, and then on occasion somebody will actually send me some sort of message, and then
you don't answer it because you're.
And then I don't answer it because I only check Twitter when I'm doing a show to tell you guys how to get in touch with me. So I will take a task to get better about checking Twitter.
All right, you can find me at ChrisLarry33. I probably will get back to you. So if you want instant interaction with a Hogsty host, I might be your best bet.
Probably.
You may
Just
not
come
like
by
what
my
you
house.
get, but you'll get a
I
response.
don't mind people dropping by. It's fine.
What's your address, John?
Come over.
Greater Philly area.
Somewhere in Houston.
And we are at some point going to have a It's Just Business Twitter feed once we get that.
Oh, yes, we will. That's on me.
Oh,
all right.
Heaven.
We'll kick that promise down announce that in 2 weeks when we will see you again for another episode of It's Just Business. Have a good 2 weeks.